Welcome to the Been There, Done That podcast, where we give our guests the opportunity to talk openly about their career, their ups and downs, and all things in between. You can follow the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can also watch it on YouTube. If you enjoyed the podcast, give us a like and a follow on our social media, which you can find in the link in the show notes. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 20. This week, I was joined by Britt Bonnici via audio link. Brit plays for the Collingwood Football Club in the AFLW, and she's played the most games for Collingwood than any other player, and made the All-Australian team this year. Although that she was named on the bench, Brit strives to one-up her efforts as we discuss her competitive nature and identity as a footballer. Thanks again to Brit for joining me, and thank you all for listening to the podcast. Right, we're live. Brittany Bonnici, welcome to the podcast, mate. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Matt.
That's good. I got to say, unlucky for being in lockdown over in Melbourne. Must be, what's the word I'm looking for? Probably want to be kind of agonising that you have to be stuck inside again for another 5 days.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal. Yeah, it's definitely not ideal at all. Finally had a bit of plans for the weekend, had a bit of fun planned, and Dan Andrews has decided to cage us up once again. But us Victorians, we're pretty much seasoned pros at this now, so all over it.
That's so true. But it must be pretty good as well, so you still be able to go outside and do all your off-season running and making sure you stay fit.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm pretty lucky with that, I guess. I got a gym set up in my garage, which is pretty handy when you're locked in the house, but can still get out and go for a couple of runs and stuff like that. And my partner, he's actually a personal trainer, so it's pretty handy having him on site when I'm locked up and helping someone to keep me a bit accountable.
That's perfect. Happy days. I wish you're quite jealous. I wish I had my own little setup I can have out the back and lift weights without anyone disturbing me or being distracted while I'm at the gym.
Yeah, well, I have 2 German Shepherds, so it's not quite without its distractions. They quite often bring their ball in and think that it's playtime, but slowly training them to keep out.
Yeah, that's right. You can always use them as extra weights. You can hop them on the back and do some extra back squats.
Yeah, well, when you do push-ups, that's exactly what happens. Let me tell you, they jump on top of you, and they're not exactly light, those two.
That's perfect. That's hilarious. I've got to say, congratulations on making the All-Australian team for 2020. How does it feel kind of personally to kind of have that kind of accolade, the individual honour?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all. It's so funny. I honestly can't explain the feeling or the thoughts or anything I have around it. It's one of those things that I'm a really competitive person, and I always like to try and be the best and be amongst the best. And I guess when you think about the All-Australian accolade, that's what it signifies, and it puts you in alongside so many people that I've looked up to and idolized for so long. But I still look at my game and I think sort of back to my season, and I see so many areas in my game I want to improve, and I see so many aspects I could have been better in. And I guess growing up, I sort of thought, rather than having medals around all your teammates' necks, where the premiers, that's obviously the ultimate goal, but something like All-Australian, I always thought, I guess would make me feel somewhat accomplished. But I guess I'm honoured. I'm absolutely honoured, and I love the acknowledgement. Don't get me wrong, but I'm still striving for so much more. It's not the ceiling I thought it might have been, and it just makes me want to do it again and want to be better. And I was named on the bench, so now all of a sudden I'm already setting a new goal for myself of wanting to get on the field. And I guess that's just one of my traits. It's me being the competitor I am. I want to be better, and that's when my sights are set for next year, is having the flag. And if another individual accolade comes along with that, that's awesome. But it's a strange one.
Does like your natural competitiveness, is it being competitive against yourself, or is it you kind of compare yourself to other kind of people that you look up to and try to strive to be like them or be better than them?
No, I definitely think it's competitive against myself. I always want to be better at everything I do, and it's not just at footy. It's when I'm studying, it's as a colleague, it's as a friend, it's as a sibling, it's a girlfriend. I always want to make sure that I guess I'm learning and I'm being better, and I'm getting more strings to my bow, as I like to say. I never want to be stagnant. I'm really ambitious. I have a lot of goals for myself, and I always sort of have. So yeah, that competitiveness, I guess, like I said, it's not about wanting to get in an all Australian team to, say that I'm better than the rest or anything like that. It's a goal for myself of, last year, I was in the squad and I didn't make the team, and I knew the next step for me to be better was to get into the team. And then again, how do you get better from that? The next step is, I got in the team, and like I said, I was on the bench. So now my next step is get on the field. And it's not, I guess, against anybody else, that competitive streak. It's just for myself. I want to keep being better. And, that's just in the field of individual accolades, I guess. But I have that mindset sort of, with my uni assignments. I want to, if I get 97, I want to get 98. And then once I get 98%, I want to get 99%. And it's always just taking those next steps.
Yeah, of course. Do you feel like there will ever be, or there will come a time where you kind of get to the top of the mountain and then you will probably struggle to find the next step up? Or do you feel like it's an endless, there'll always be something there to strive towards?
It's a funny question that you actually asked that, because it's something that I've had conversations with a lot of people about. I guess it's really easy to want to keep finding that next step, but at some stage you do also have to be proud of where you are and happy with sort of where you've got to. So I personally, that's something I'm trying to sort of find at the moment, is when's the time where you're reflecting, you're really proud of yourself, and when's the time to push yourself for that next level. And I'm slowly getting there and finding that next step. I definitely think everyone can always be better in some aspect, but I think for me, it's not about when I get to the top of the mountain. I think it's when I get to the stage where I'm ready to reflect. I'm ready to be proud. That's not to say I'm not proud of myself right now. I definitely am, and I can identify that I work hard and all of that stuff. But it's finding that happy medium of striving to be better and making sure you continue to set goals, because there's always someone on your tail and all of those sayings. But it's about finding the mix between pushing yourself to be better, but also acknowledging sort of all the work you put in up until this point.
For sure. You were saying, you just said before, you're about reflecting. Do you look back on the season 2020 as a team collective? There'd be a bit of a mixed feeling, I guess, upon reflecting on it, because you did so well to get to where you were, but then you were so close not to actually get to the last game of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's individual reflection, there's team reflection, there's club reflection. When you get so close, I guess it's really hard not to think about the what ifs. But I think when you look back on our entire season and you reflect on where we were, I guess before you reflect on the season, you reflect on the entire being of the AFLW team as part of the Collingwood Footy Club. And you look at us 5 years ago, and we definitely weren't competitive. We were sort of scraping through seasons and just aiming to win a game here or there. And 2 seasons ago, we started to find our feet, and we started to understand that we actually can do this, and we're we're part of the competition, and there's no reason we're different to any of the other teams that are in there. And we started to see ourselves succeed, and we found ourselves in the final series for the first time ever. And we missed out on making it to the second stage of finals really narrowly. I think it was a couple of points against North Melbourne, and then we learnt from that, and we reflected on that. And, that one cut deep, but we were really proud of where we had got to, considering we had finished bottom of the ladder the year prior. And then this year comes around, and you've sort of got a bit of a taste of that success. You've got a taste of what it means to be a real competitor and a real contender for the final series. And we used that, and we got to where we did. And unfortunately, I guess a theme throughout our season was our late starts and not coming out to play right from the start and needing the kick up the butt at half time. And in the end, that's what got us. We came up against Brisbane, and were one round out from the grand final, and they were able to play 4 quarters, and they were able to play more sustainable game than us, and that's what got us in the end. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that, and we don't shy away from that. It would be really easy to say, oh, they were just a better team, which they were ultimately, but being able to acknowledge that we very much need to develop from that way, the way we played this year. And I definitely think, upon reflection, I've definitely learned from this year, and I have no doubt all the other girls would have learnt as well. It was a pretty disappointing end to our season, to say the least.
Was there a point at all where you kind of put the finger on why you kind of had slow starts in your game?
To be honest, I haven't just yet. I think it could be numerous things, and I know that once we get back into the swing of pre-season, we'll definitely look at that as a club and as a collective. It's one of those things that's really hard. You definitely have to reflect on it, and you definitely have to look at it to get better for the next season. But you can only reflect on it for so long, and I definitely know that our coaches will have looked over that numerous times, and I know that when we go into pre-season, that's going to be a real theme. And I trust our coaches' process in making sure we learn what we need to learn moving forward, but also not beating ourselves up over it. It's going to be really important.
For sure. Do you find there's this going into this season, we kind of sit down as a big club to talk about that, or was that spoken about after the prelim game and like reflected on the season, or is that something that starts again next year?
Yeah, we reflected on the game, and we reflected on the season. I think the big thing for us was it wasn't just something that happened in the game. It's something that happened throughout our entire season. So we did reflect on it a little bit.
Right.
And it was a theme throughout all of our reviews that we spoke about. But definitely when we come into the next season, I've no doubt it'll be spoken about to some extent. You know, I don't know how much. I don't know how much talking about it is going to change it. I think it's definitely us needing to practice it, and it's in our action. And that's things like starting training sessions with intent, keeping that intent throughout training sessions, whether it be in the gym or it be a skill session, and being able to keep each other accountable as well, making sure that we build relationships where you can pull girls up if they are starting to, lose the momentum or anything like that. So I definitely think it'll be spoken about, but I think from here on out, it's going to be more in our actions.
We spoke about it off air, about kind of making relationships or kind of having a team, like a stable team, and able to build strong relationships with other girls, and you can pull them up on that. And it's good that this group, and it kind of was 2 years, you've kind of had a good core group together. How important are those relationships being held together over those years going to impact over the next couple of years coming forward?
Yeah, like I said to you, I honestly think that relationships are one of the most underestimated parts of football and of our on-field stuff as well. It's really easy, I guess, to think that footy is just structures, but at the end of the day, you've got to know what makes your teammates tick.
Yeah.
You have to know the way that they think and the way that they move, and those relationships are so important. You look at our history in the AFLW, and the Pies girls didn't keep a core foundation for the first 3 years. We constantly had a high number of players moving in and moving out of our team, and it was really hard for us to find that core collective players. And you look at our most recent season, and we only have 5 girls from the foundation of our club. And I think that's potentially one of the lowest numbers from any of the clubs throughout the AFLW. You look at teams that have been really competitive for a number of years now. That's a team like the Adelaide Crows, and they've been able to keep that core collective. And for the first 3 years, we really struggled to do that. In the most recent years, thinking back the past 2 seasons, that's been one of our biggest changes, is keeping a core number of girls. In the most recent trade and sign period, we only lost 4 girls, and unfortunately that's the minimal number. So it just meant that we had to do that. But in that process, we got other girls in who are really going to add to our team, add to the collective that we have, and girls who have experience in the AFLW already, and Sabrina Frederick and Al Downey. And I think it's really powerful and potentially underestimated again what those girls can bring, because being part of the AFLW already, and understanding all this stuff around how important it is to have relationships and have open and honest conversations, having them come in to an already established group is really, really powerful. And I think they're going to be a great mix.
Do you, as well as training together as a group, do you do things outside of the club that kind of help you girls bond together a bit more?
Yeah, we definitely do. And I think the start of preseason as well, as much as it's about getting fit, it's about creating that bond and that collective. And, whether it be going out for brekkie, or going out for lunch, or meeting at the club a little bit earlier to have coffee, or, to be honest, it doesn't even need to be something like that. Sometimes it can simply be just those conversations you have in the locker room before you go out on the training track. Just getting to know the girls and getting to understand the way that they work, getting to know them personally. You spend a lot of time with these girls. You spend a lot of time at the club. So getting to know sort of what happens in their everyday life, what they do for work, getting to know about their family, it creates those relationships, and it's so important to have them moving forward, because being part of the AFLW, and especially being part of a club like Collingwood, who people love us or people hate us, at times, people go through different things, and at times it can be really confronting for some players. And, somebody might have a really rough day at work, and without those relationships, it makes it hard to understand when your teammate's feeling off, or, know when your teammate needs to pick me up, or even just needs to be left alone for a little bit. And creating those bonds and just getting to know each other is really powerful. So whether that be outside of the club or at the club, I think it's very much driven by us players to make sure we understand the power of that and find the time to do that with each other.
Yeah, definitely. Does it weigh on you much that you have, like, there's other things or expectations of you outside of the AFL as well, like jobs, other relationships as well, and coming into the club and still having, expectations from coaches, from fans, to keep up a performance standard?
Yeah, it definitely hit me probably at the end of the first season. I think when I first came into the AFLW, I was just really excited to be part of what I didn't know what it would be. Nobody really knew what the AFL was going to be. And then at the end of the first season, I think it really sort of hit me, because we weren't great. We didn't have a great season. And we were the Collingwood Footy Club. And like I said, people love you or they hate you. And we have a really strong history, and everybody's always got something to say. And at the end of that season was probably the first time I was exposed to that side of footy. And everybody has something to say, whether it be about your team or the men's team, or something they saw in the media. People like to talk, and people also like to, I guess, get insider information. And it really hit me at the end of the first season, just realizing, I guess, that people, I want to say people care about your performance, but I don't think that really gives off the impression of what care means in that aspect. People, the way that you play or the way your club plays impacts people, and it makes a big impact on their everyday life, and you don't necessarily understand that until you're in that. You know, your team wins and people are really happy and they want to tell you they're happy, but then your team loses and people want to tell you that as well. And you know, I spend every day looking after people's welfare, and that's what that's my day-to-day job. What I want to do is make people happy and find people find their, you know, their optimal happiness. And then your team doesn't do well on the weekend and somebody wants to tell you about how shitty they feel because your team's crap. And that definitely takes a toll on you, and it impacts you more than, I guess, the public eye sees. But it's really important, I guess, then to build your own resilience and to make sure you find your own networks to deal with that sort of thing. And 5 years on now, I've definitely learned, I guess, to disassociate in some ways to the outside eye. And I think that that's helped me play better football overall as well.
It's interesting you say you disassociate yourself from that, because it's so much of people have really strong feelings and a strong connection to like a tribe or a team that they support, and it's all like a mass amount of, like a big tribe, like a big group of people band together. They come out and they support a team for 2 hours on a Saturday or a Sunday, and it's like an outlet of emotion for them, but they don't really understand the consequences of the actions that they say or their language that they use outside of that. And then if you, like, as a player, listens to that and takes it in and soaks it in, that's those words that hurt, and then it puts you down in a way that affects you in training, affects you out on the field as well, which is crazy to think that happens. But how did you kind of work your way around disassociating yourself? Did you just stop listening to the outside voices, or did you stop reading articles in the newspaper, for example?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is when you get drafted, you already have an idea of what a footballer is in your head before you get drafted, you know. And before the first year of AFLW, all of those pitchers were men, and they were all they were the Dusty Martins or the Paddy Cripps or the Patrick Dangerfield, all these big time players, and that was your picture of what it meant to be an AFL footballer. And obviously, you know, there's quite a bit of fame that surrounds those people, and money and followers and all of that sort of stuff. And I think in the first year, it was somewhat hard not to think of yourself to get there one day, is to be like those players that you looked up to, of what a footballer means. And so you'd be really excited, and you'd see your face pop up somewhere for the first time, and it was like, oh wow, like I'm getting there, sort of thing. And then you started to realize that it's not all that it may seem when you're younger, to be the face of something, or to have your face pop up on a news article on social media or whatever. So in that first year, I was really intrigued about what all of it was. And, you know, I'd read comments and see if people sort of thought my game was good, or, you know, whatever, because that was all part of being a footballer in my eyes, was, you know, having like people who care about the way you play and your performance, and one day seeing someone with the number on your back. And after that first season, I guess I realized that my picture of being an AFL footballer probably wasn't realistic, and it definitely wasn't realistic for the women's league. And I guess it sort of happened, I guess, a bit naturally. I just realized that it wasn't what I thought it was, and I identified the parts that weren't. So that was the social media side of things. I no longer looked for somebody to write a comment about my game on social media, because whether they wrote it good or bad, that when it came to my football, that didn't really impact anything. It wasn't, unfortunately, what somebody writes on on Facebook about your football isn't going to actually impact what you do on the ground, but what your coach has to say about your football is going to impact what you has on the ground. So I just had to, I guess, reframe my thoughts a little bit, and come back to the realistic side of things, that what happens in the four walls at the footy club, that's what makes you a footballer, not all the external noise.
Yeah. Mm. Do you feel like as a female footballer, do you feel like you're obligated to the younger girls to kind of present an image to them to look up to?
Yeah, I definitely think in the first few years there was a picture of what it meant to be an AFLW footballer, and it was, very much cross the T's, dot the I's of. I guess for me it was I've always been a runner. I've always been fit, so for me it was really important to make sure that when I came in I was like top of the class at fitness and stuff like that, and that was who I wanted to be as a footballer. But again, you realise, I guess, what doesn't always matter. So when it came to being the persona of being an AFLW footballer, there was a real ideology around it. And I definitely wanted to live up to that in the first few years. But then I've started to realize, I guess, the past couple of years that it's more important just to be yourself and to let your own personality shine through. I 100% would tell anybody coming into the AFLW industry to just be yourself and not worry too much about, I guess, what your perception of being a footballer is. And that's the message I would want to get across to young girls as well, is just be yourself, be unapologetically yourself. Because we all, I guess, try and hide away at some stage because there's stigmas around different things, and everything you jump into, there's a stereotype. Like for so long, if you played footy, it meant, and you're a girl, it meant that, people would call you a lesbian, or it meant that, you wanted to be a boy or something like that. And for so long, that was the stigma around that. And unless you were yourself in that environment, it was really hard to keep your own identity. And I think that's why it's so important that young
True.
girls and young boys and people everywhere just remain who they are, and are unapologetically who they are, no matter the environment you're going into, whether it's walking into an office full of, I don't know, any environment you walk into that not every aspect of you lives up to. It's okay to be different in different environments. I mean, I was the only girl who played footy in the boys' environment, and it would have been very easy for me, I guess, to shy away from that. But I was myself when I was playing boys' footy, and I ended up making a whole heap of friends just by being who I was. And when I got my first job, I thought that I had to walk in there being the smartest person there, and that wasn't the reality of it. I just had to go in there being sort of someone who got their first job and being willing to learn and wanting to hear, I guess, all the tricks of the trade. So the way that your ideologies are framed around different environments is super important. But on top of that, and any message I'll send to any young person is go in and be yourself. It makes such a better impact than going in trying to be someone you're not.
I guess it's difficult as well for some people because I guess some part of themselves are almost embarrassed, maybe a little bit shy of being different and being shy because they're the ones who are kind of turned up at or been made fun of because they are different.
Absolutely. And that's, I mean, we would love to say that the world's not like that, but that's what the world is like, and that's what society are like. And people like to point out things that are different. I mean, I wear a helmet, and the amount of questions I get about wearing a helmet, and the amount of comments that come through about wearing a helmet, I was so embarrassed my first game that I had to chuck that lid on, and I had all of my teammates offer to wear a helmet with that game with me because I was so nervous.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was awesome. And I told him not to worry about it. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But me myself, I was extremely shy about doing that, and I'm not a shy person at all. But 5 years on or 6 years on from that now, I say this about being so unapologetically yourself, because once you let go of sort of those feelings and those emotions, I don't even think about chucking on the helmet now. I just do it. And now I love it because it is different. It is different, and it creates conversation, and people ask questions about it, and I get to speak to different people because of it. And if I could have known that 5 years ago to just walk into an environment, and for me then that was walk onto the footy field with a helmet and be comfortable with that. It would have stopped a whole lot of thoughts and feelings for myself. Wouldn't, I know it's easier said than done, and I've been in the environment and I couldn't do it, but definitely if I had the skills then I would have loved it.
Did you find it kind of hard to not listen to other people, or like especially around the helmet and all of that, and being different or all those things? Was it hard to kind of say, this is me, I don't really care what anyone says, I'm just going to do it anyway? Or did it just come naturally?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, no, I think it's a bit of both. I always how do you put it? Definitely when I did have to wear that helmet for the first time, like I said, I was absolutely shitting myself. And I think back now and I don't really understand why I was shitting myself. At the end of the day, it's something that I wore to protect me. But it was that idea that nobody else was doing it. And, nobody, and I wanted to be seen as the tough footballer because that was what I was. I was in an under mid. And in my mind, wearing the helmet made me somewhat weaker. And I guess it all comes with growing up, and it comes with seeing things out. When I got drafted, then again, I was reconsidering whether I should wear my helmet or not because I didn't want to be the only girl on TV wearing a helmet. But once you start challenging it a couple of times, and that's what I did in that first game, I just sucked it up and I did it, and I challenged my own thoughts by wearing it. And I did the same when I played my first game at AFLW football. I really didn't want to be on the TV wearing the helmet because no one else was really doing it. But I challenged myself and I did it, and you overcome it. It's like a fear sort of thing. Like you end up overcoming it, and like I said, now I don't even think about it. I chuck it on, and it's like a fear. You face it a couple of times, and it becomes a whole lot less daunting. And I even think back to when I did play boys footy, like I mentioned before. Like I said, I was completely myself there, but that's nothing to say that in the first few training sessions I wasn't absolutely shitting myself, and I potentially partly didn't want to be there because I was different and I was the only girl there. But once you do it a couple of times and once you challenge yourself a couple of times, it becomes easier, not only for that challenge, but for the next one that comes up as well.
Yeah, for sure. Excuse me. I follow MMA. It's like one of my sports that I love to follow outside of footy. And one of my favourite fighters at the moment is Israel Adesanya. And he's Nigerian born, grew up in New Zealand. So he's a black guy living in a white man's country, more or less. And he's UFC middleweight world champion at the moment. And he talks about this all the time, about being comfortable in your own skin, obviously, and being a part of something that's bigger than just yourself. And, he says like he loves anime, which is different to everyone else. And he has all these other things that separate him from everyone else, but he's so open and talks about it, and he's so naturally himself. And that's why I think he kind of has a really big following, because people realize that he's being himself, and he said it himself, like, I'm just being myself. I'm not trying to be fake, to call out, like the nomenclature of UFC is to call out your opponents, to trash bag them and all this sort of stuff. But Israel Adesanya does it naturally. Like if someone's talking shit about him, then he would talk shit back. He would have never instigated off his own back, or he was saying that he was bullied a lot through high school, and then there was an opponent that he had he was bullying him, and he's like, well, this is just like it was back in high school. Like, why am I dealing with high school bullshit now in the UFC? Like, he was talking all this sort of, saying all that sort of stuff. But the most important part he always says is being himself, and how much that means to him that other people recognize you being yourself, which, tying back into what we've been discussing, is other people kind of appreciate it and can kind of see you being yourself. And it's important to kind of lift those people up and to say that it's good to be like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is. It's super confronting when I guess you first start doing these things and you start calling things out, or you start doing things a bit different. But once you do become comfortable with it, it's extremely powerful. And I guess
freedom. It's like
you never
freeing yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't just come with football; it comes with everyday sort of life as well. And or for Israel, I'm sure it doesn't just come for fighting; it comes for everyday life of just being comfortable. And that's not to say that I'm never uncomfortable. I love putting myself in uncomfortable positions because it's challenging again. And like I said at the start of this podcast, I'm super competitive and I'm super competitive with myself. And I'm always wanting to get better. And those challenges and putting yourself in positions where you're uncomfortable is where that comes from. And the second you start shying away from that is the second you stop growing and you stop developing. And absolutely, like you said, having those people around is really powerful. The only reason I'm in this position to feel I guess so comfortable is because of so many people that I've surrounded myself with in the past.
There's good role models, and I think as well, a lot of it is maturity as well. I think as you kind of grow up and realize that you go through phases in life where different things are important. Like when you're younger, like you have a lot of friends and you kind of want to establish a career, go to uni, do all that sort of stuff. And as you kind of grow up, you kind of go through a phase potentially as like a generalization. Do you see things differently? Maybe spending all your time studying wasn't as important as connecting with your family or focusing on other things in life that are important as you get older.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it would be awesome if we knew all this stuff when we were growing up and we had all the skills that we had now. Definitely growing up would have been a whole lot easier, I reckon, for all of us. But that's all part of it. That's part of growing up, and that's part of I guess for me, that's part of being an AFLW footballer. And it's about sharing the message. And the reality is nobody's going to learn it straight away. We learn through our experiences and we learn through each other. And that sort of stuff doesn't happen until you're a bit older.
Well, they don't call it growing up for no reason, do they?
Exactly right.
Do you? Yeah. Explain to me your experience over in New Zealand, because obviously you went over there a part of the AFL High Performance Academy. Is that correct?
Yeah. That was wild, that experience, to be honest with you. I had no idea that people played footy over in New Zealand. Like when we got told we're going over there to play, I was just mind blown. And at that stage, that was sort of, I guess, the pinnacle of playing women's footy at my age. I think we were about 16 when we were going over there, and the pathway was sort of you'd play you'd play TAC Cup, and then you'd play Vic, and then you'd sort of get selected at All Australian if you're lucky, and then that was it. And then this one year, you sort of got selected in this random high performance academy that just came out of nowhere, and it was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And we just sort of got told we're going to train together for a week, and that was cool. And then all of a sudden we got to that week, and then we got told that from that week people were going to be selected to go over and play in New Zealand, and that was wild. And pretty much it was 2 weeks of playing footy in New Zealand, getting to travel around a bit, which was awesome. And I had made really good friends and really good connections, and some of those girls are in the AFLW today, and some have gone and found, I guess, different pathways. But one of the great mates that I made in that trip was Sabrina Frederick, who I mentioned before has just been brought over to the Pies. So it's going to be she was actually captain and I was vice captain of that. Australia Breeze is what the team was called. And it's wicked that we're going to get to suit up together again this year.
Awesome. So how did that work? Was it like you just played a couple of games over there? There wasn't really too much of I don't know, it was like a round robin kind of tournament type of thing, or you just played a couple of games, that was it?
Yeah, it was sort of just we played a couple of games and that was it. I think we played maybe 3 or 4 games, and we did training sessions with the New Zealand team. So it was, I guess it was about sort of growing AFL over there, as well as enhancing our own personal development and our professional development of traveling as a team, which was really awesome. And unfortunately they only did 2 of those tours, so it sort of didn't take off, I guess, as much as they would have liked it to. But I'm extremely lucky and grateful that I got to be a part of that that first ever tournament going over there.
Yeah, would have been a good opportunity, I think, maybe as well for selectors to potentially look at you girls as well. I think that would have been one of the reasons, probably.
Yeah, I'd assume so. To be honest, I don't know too much about how it all came about, and sort of all why it stopped. But at that stage, like I said, there wasn't really anywhere to go after that. I guess that was sort of classified as the pinnacle of it was youth girls footy at that time. So it wasn't necessarily for people to see what we could do or anything like that, because there was nowhere to really go after that step. I think it was more of just the experience side of it and hoping to develop AFL football in New Zealand.
You said you got to travel around New Zealand. What kind of stood out to you about New Zealand?
I've been a couple of times, actually. I was really lucky to go over there. It is just stunning. Like some of the views that you get to see there, and it's just natural. Everything is natural and it's awesome. And I'm a sucker for a nice landscape. So it was cool to get over there, see all the mountains. Honestly, I was a little kid in a candy shop when I traveled New Zealand, that's for sure.
That's awesome. Did you go hiking up any mountains or anything like that?
We did do one major hike. I remember that we actually went, and one of the girls got super car sick because we were going up this mountain and we had to turn around and we didn't get to go all the way to the top. But when she was being sick, the rest of us jumped out of the car and the view was amazing. So that was the one hike we got to do up there, which, it was memorable, that's for sure.
Did you, they still had, they had AFL ovals and all that there, did they?
Yeah, it was, they were sort of rugby ovals turned soccer ovals. Soccer ovals, football ovals. And it was really cool. A lot of the girls that we versed from New Zealand were sort of soccer or rugby players who were wanting to try something new. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if one day we hear of one of them coming across, because I didn't know what to expect going over there versing somebody like New Zealand, where, they haven't had, us as young females had never really had any experience or opportunity in AFL as it was. But then you take us and you put us in an environment where those girls have had absolutely no experience or opportunity whatsoever. You didn't really know what to expect. You didn't know what the team was going to be like, what their skills were going to be like. But they were actually really surprisingly good. And I say that because I think about if I was to try and pick up soccer, for instance, I would be terrible. But these girls just had the natural nick of sport. And obviously, like I said, they've come from soccer and rugby. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had a few New Zealand girls coming over to the AFL one day, because they definitely have a foundation for it over there.
Yeah. Well, even with, I think rugby especially could be a good kind of foundation for coming into women's football. Like you got Chloe Dalton and Kelly Gibson, who are two former rugby sevens, or Chloe still is a rugby seven athlete as well. But that you got the explosive running and you got evasive manoeuvres as well, which would carry over as well, which is also surprising why we haven't really seen too many other New Zealand or Kiwi players come over and pick up the oval football.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think potentially it is, I guess, well, also the AFLW has been gone for 2 years with COVID, so you have to wipe those 2 years out of it. They're definitely not coming now. But I guess before that, the AFLW probably wasn't established enough to really get, I guess, a whole foundation of players ready. And I guess we wanted to develop our brand first and find that talent here. But I think in the coming years, we will find a massive spike in international players coming from all over the world. I think that, you see it with Ireland at the moment, the amount of players that are coming from over there.
Yes.
We have 2 Irish girls in our team at Pies, and their ability to pick up what it is to what it means to play football based off Gaelic. I mean, over there they train and play more than we play here. and they do it for completely different reasons. They do it completely for the love of the game. I mean, don't get me wrong, we absolutely do it for the love of the game as well, but they train and play like professional athletes without getting a cent for it, without any real endorsements or anything like that. So they come over and then they play for, they start playing for the AFLW, and they show us what it really means, I guess, to have pure passion. And they're things they're things you don't get from homegrown Australian footballers. So it's really important that we continue to bring those players in, not only for the development, I guess, of the league, but for the development of us as players as well.
That's so, yeah, it's interesting as well, because I discussed that with Ruby as well, how much passion and pride they have for their country, or their county, that they sacrifice so much to give so much back.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really cool. Like it show, and even, like where they grow up is where they play for. You play for the team, like your homegrown team. And if you don't play for that team, you don't go and play for another team. There's no trading and any of that stuff that there is in the AFL. And it's a really cool environment.
Yeah, and they pack out stadiums as well.
Yeah, absolutely they do. And it's wild. And their supporters and their fan base, it's all homegrown. And I think that's really cool.
And as well, you probably look back in the men's program when they started doing the international rules series. I feel like those crossover skills, like learning how to kick around the body with a circle ball, has actually helped AFL players with their skill, like the banana kicks, for example. Like before then, players weren't able to do those or able to be as accurate as with those kicks.
Mate, it is crazy. On St. Patrick's Day last year, we had we got one of the soccer balls out, and we're getting one of the girls to teach us some of the Gaelic rules. And I thought it would be just like footy. I thought we'd have it down pat. We had girls falling over. Like I was trying to kick, I was trying to run and kick as fast as they do and kick around my body. And I have never felt so uncoordinated in my entire life. Like if you want an ego boost, Gaelic footy is not the sport for you.
No, it's not. Oh wow, that's interesting. So you weren't ever a multi-sport athlete as a kid, just straight footy?
I am absolutely one-dimensional when it comes to sport. I did little athletics, if that's classified as a proper sport. So
but everyone did that.
So I did some running, which was great. Anything with another ball, and I am absolutely having a laugh if I even say I've got minor skill at it.
You said earlier that you were naturally fit. Is that just from you naturally fit, like you just started running in footy and then you were already good, or did you ran just for fun to get fit before you started playing footy?
I think it's probably a little bit of both, I guess. I grew up playing doing cross country. And I was, sort of, I guess, up there with some of the athletes of my age group at that time. And I guess it might be one of those nature versus nurture sorts of debates, whether, when you're 12 and you're up there for cross country, whether that's that you were sort of born with that, or whether, I guess, you developed it. But I don't know. I don't think I really know enough about the sport of running to make a comment on that. So if there's any runners listening to this, please don't crucify me for my comments.
Yeah, right. That's crazy. Did you ever what about gym, strength training? Did you ever get into that before getting to the AFLW system?
I never stepped foot into a gym until I was drafted, pretty much. When I was a bit younger and I played senior women's footy, I realised that I had to get a bit bigger if I wanted to compete against grown women. And I maybe did a little bit of gym, a little bit of strength training, but when I say it was gym and strength training, I had no idea what I was doing. I got a gym membership and I went in and did a couple of bicep curls. It was never proper strength training. And that was because at that time, women's footy wasn't really a thing. There was no reason for us to do proper strength training. It was very similar just to a bloke playing local footy. Some of them might buy in and go to the gym and stuff like that, but if you don't need to, a lot of them won't do it. And I was probably in that category. I played sort of in the youth girls carnivals and stuff, and you'd get programs that you'd do based around sort of, you might do a couple of air squats and stuff like that, but there's not too much strength you can grow through that stuff. But it definitely wasn't until I was in the AFL system that I started to really hit the gym. And if you see photos of me back from when I was younger, not that I'm necessarily big now, I like to sometimes think I'm a bit bigger than what I am. But if you look back to me when I was sort of 16, like I was a little twig. I was getting thrown around like no tomorrow.
Yeah. And obviously now you see the difference between, like, you feel like physically stronger, able to get in the contest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because when I was drafted, I was drafted into a pool of people who were all in the same we all had the same experience. We never had to do gym or anything like that. So there were a few girls who did gym and were stronger. And then there were a whole heap of girls who had never really done it before. So once I started getting, I guess, into the gym and stuff like that, the first few years I probably didn't notice it. And that was because everybody in the competition were around the same, I guess, had the same strength base. But now, as I'm sort of 5 years in, and there's more girls coming in who haven't, I had this conversation with a few of the draftees actually last year, just to say how much you notice your body changing, how much you notice your body has changed when younger girls come in. Because I look at a lot of the girls who just got drafted, and you see that they're smaller. And I look back to photos of myself then, and I noticed how much smaller I was. But I guess because it's sort of, I guess, that thing, my nephews, my sister doesn't notice them growing up, but I notice them growing up because you don't see someone in so many years. So until I look back on photos stuff, I don't really realize how much bigger I've got. I say this as if I'm like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, and I'm really not. But yeah, like you do see the changes and stuff. I'm definitely still not
you probably feel it.
I'm definitely still not the strongest player in the team. But I'm definitely a bit stronger than Steph Chiocci if she listens to this, because she likes to tell me about how big her biceps are.
Oh, bang.
Bang, bang.
Yeah. Did you feel like it's probably one of those, the thing like with guys, probably like it's a natural, the physiques are a natural part of the game. Like they probably feel themselves and see themselves and say, oh, I look bigger, I feel bigger, all that. But with girls, it's kind of the other way, where they don't really understand that being bigger and strong, looking bigger and stronger comes in and plays a part in the game itself. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, it comes with the development of the AFLW, because you're starting to see girls now who are genuine athletes. And it's like anything, you pair a genuine athlete up with someone who's not a genuine athlete, and that's when you start to see the differences. And now that you sort of have the AFLW and you have local footy and you have sort of the Victorian or the national carnivals and stuff, you start to, I guess, see that difference in the different categories of athlete.
And you were a part of the exhibition game, the Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs game. Looking back, do you feel like that from playing in that game, do you feel like the competition, the skill level has developed beyond where you imagined it to be?
Yeah, to be honest, that game is a complete blur, because I just could not believe I was there at all. Like the girls that were in that game, I had idolized for so long, and that entire experience for me just felt like, I don't even know. It almost didn't even feel real, because I could not believe that I was on a team and playing with so many girls that I had just looked up to for so long. I honestly was like, think about like a little kid seeing like all their idols like following them around. That was me in that entire experience. I just was completely rattled the entire time, and it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, because you were quite young at the time. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I was 17 when I did it. Yeah, and like I said, like all these players were just girls that I'd only ever really thought about meeting, let alone playing with or playing against. And then on top of that, you get given like an AFL jersey, and it was so surreal for me. I honestly never pictured myself being, I guess, in that category of players. And I wish now that I think about it, I wish I took a step back and took a deep breath to actually be more a part of it. But I really just went through that entire experience the whole time thinking, is this fucking real? Like, is this really happening for me right now?
What were the big names that stood out for you?
Mel Hickey. Mel Hickey was a massive one. I grew up absolutely idolizing her. And I remember before the game, we had a conversation and we're both sitting on the, just about to, like, sort of right near the fence where you're about to walk out onto the ground. And we just sat there and we're just chatting, and we weren't chatting about footy. We were just chatting about sort of life in general. And I could not believe that I was on Mel Hickey's team. It was absolutely rattling to me. I grew up absolutely idolizing her, and it was awesome for me to be there. Alicia Eva was massive. Cara Denellen had played for the seniors team. So I played for the St. Albans Spurs in the youth girls. She played for the seniors. She was somebody sort of I'd always looked up to, and I was playing with her, and I could honestly probably name the entire team to you, to be honest.
Well, it is. Well, like in comparison, it's almost like that would have been the it group. Like that, those two teams they were picked out of the best kind of women's players available at that time, and you were 17 in that side. Did that like make you feel like on top of the world?
It probably should have, but like I said to you before, I honestly just could not believe it was happening to me. I honestly did not think I belonged there. And that's why it's a message that I send to the girls, the young girls, so often now that come in, and I just make sure that they understand that what they bring is enough. And it's probably because of that experience. Like, I went through that entire experience just sort of in a haze, thinking this can't be real. I shouldn't really be here. And I don't want the other girls coming into the Collingwood environment ever feeling like that. I want them to get the best out of themselves, and I definitely didn't get my best out of myself, in that environment, because I was too caught up in being shocked.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's such a natural response because you were so young. You probably haven't really dealt with, that's obviously would have been the first time you've had to deal with anything like that, but maybe you didn't even have the necessary tools to be able to cope in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a really, I guess, different experience to be in, because you were sort of drafted and then you didn't train together as a team or anything like that. And then there was just like a week where you trained twice, and then you played. So I guess there wasn't really time to digest it all either. It was sort of, your first training session was getting to know each other a bit. The second training session was real brief structures, because there's only so much structure you can bring in on one training session. And then the next time you're all together, you're playing a game. So it was a really quick experience. There wasn't much time to digest it. But I also learned a lot from that experience, and it's helped me to bring the younger girls into the Collingwood environment as well.
You said earlier that you were co-captain during the New Zealand games, but also captain in the Vic Metro in the youth girls. Is there a way, or is there a particular leadership kind of style or a way that you communicate with the girls in the side that set you apart from other girls, or is it just explain a little bit about your leadership style?
Yeah, I think my style of everything probably is a bit different to most people. I'm very honest, and I'm very straight to the point. But like I said before, I do understand that you've got to approach different situations with different players differently. And that's something I've learnt the longer I've been in the footy environment. When I was younger, I don't know if I had as much of probably a filter, so it was probably a bit of a surprise that at times that was received really well. But I think the one thing for me that potentially, I guess, when people think of me as a person or as a leader, it is I'm just 100% myself, and I don't shy away from that, and I don't shy away from the tough conversations. And I think that I think that's the response that the leadership style that I respond best to. So that's probably the leadership style that I give off the most. That's not to say like I'm sort of a hard ass or anything like that. I definitely do sort of like to as well make sure everyone's doing okay. And I guess that more nurturing style, I definitely have that side of it to me as well. But I think for sure, if you were to speak to sort of my teammates or anyone who has played footy with me before, it will definitely be that more no bullshit approach that I take.
I think you summarized it beautifully when you said you approach different players with different situations. And then if you haven't read the book, it's called Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko Willink. And that was his second book. His first book was called Extreme Ownership, and he outlined 8 rules for leadership. And in this second book, he outlined there's 2 sides to those rules. Like there's a balance between going too far and then not doing enough of that rule. And I think it's the way you just said it, then it's different for everyone, and in different situations it's different for everyone, which is quite probably the best way to summarize leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone is so different. Like I said before, the best way for us to learn is through people, and people, have different styles in everything they do, whether it's learning, communication, leadership. And that's why it's so important to have holistic approaches in this sort of stuff. So you hit the nail on the head.
And you 39 games for Collingwood, which is, I think, the club leading the club with most games. What do you attribute your consistency to?
That's a great question. I probably don't have the sophisticated answer for you that you want there. I guess in some part of it is just you've got to be lucky in terms of injury. I think for the first 3 years I had a really unique role in the team, and I was a tagger, and that was my role for the team, and that sort of probably was what kept me in the team a lot of the time, because I was so young from the start. And I guess now towards sort of most recent years, potentially it's the experience from that's been able to keep me sort of there and in the team. But as a footballer and as an athlete, that's what you strive towards. You strive towards being there on game day and being part of it. And like I said before, I'm extremely competitive, and that's a major thing for me is I can't do much for the team from the sidelines. So making sure that I always prepare myself the best I can to be on the ground come game day, and to make sure that I'm not just on the ground, but I'm a contributor. That's the competitive nature in me, and that's just part of being an athlete, and that's what I want to do. So I guess part of it's luck, part of it now is experience, and the other part of it is that competitive nature.
There's a certain stigma that comes with being a tagger. Did you cop much flack or cop much stick while you're on the field? Was there much banter thrown between player and yourself?
Oh, I think when you're following somebody around all the time, it's fucking annoying for them. So of course, every now and then, you'd get the odd comment from a player or something like that. But I was never really exposed to too much stigma about being a tagger. I've probably heard more about it since I haven't been a tagger, and maybe it was nobody wanted to tell me that there was a stigma when I was a tagger, because they didn't want to make me feel bad or anything like that. But I low-key wish that I sort of copped a bit more while I was a tagger. I love a decent sledge, so I wouldn't have mind getting into it with a couple of the girls.
That's funny. Did you have any go-to tactics to kind of get under the skin of the opposition?
No, not really, to be honest. If I knew the girl that I was tagging,
too nice.
I don't reckon many people that I've ever played on would say that one, but I'll take the compliment. If I knew the girl that I was tagging, I might have said a couple of cheeky comments here or there, but I just really had a mentality that if you get the ball, then I haven't done my job. So I just made sure that it was really simple for me. It was I stopped them from getting the ball, and I'll get to the footy first. I didn't really ever overthink anything. I think that was one of the best parts of being a tagger was I just went into every game thinking like my game is purely based off this other person. So it's easy for me to prepare for a game because I just got to know what she's doing, and that's that.
Yeah, exactly. Did you feel, because obviously you were young when you were doing that role, it might have been a bit different, but did you kind of feel like that, oh, why am I a tagger? Or is that the role's kind of like beneath me, if that like kind of a fair kind of
No,
judge?
not really, to be honest. I sort of
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I was, every week they were
Yeah.
coming to me saying, this is that team's best player, and I want you lining up alongside her. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the challenge of that. And again, these were girls I looked up to. So I loved the fact that, there was, I'm getting told to run next to Daisy Pearce for every game. And it was a learning experience for me. I'd get to see what she was doing and where she was running. And, um, I understand that, like I say, I understand now there's a stigma around it, but when I think about it, it's also an awesome compliment for somebody to have your back to every week say this is their best player and you're the one I want to play on them.
Trust, yeah, it's like the trust that you can do the
Yeah,
job
yeah,
to stop their best player.
absolutely. And my team were
It's an interesting way to put it.
really awesome in understanding, I guess, the sacrifice of the role that I did play, and really revving that up and hyping that up. And now if there ever is a girl on my team who gets a tag, who gets given the job of tagging, I'll make sure she understands how important that role is.
Did you feel intimidated at all being the tagger and playing on girls like Daisy Pearce or whoever else were big names in that side?
I think I did a bit at the start, definitely. Like I said, when I was playing for Melbourne in that game, I was, absolutely idolising these girls, and then you come into an even bigger league of the AFLW, and you're doing that as well. You definitely at the start it was really intimidating, but at the end of the day, like it was just another game of footy, and I had to try and remind myself that. And I think towards the end, I ended up just not even thinking about it. I just thought about the challenge and really loved that aspect of it. I've said it a number of times, but I'm so competitive. I'm competitive with everything, like literally everything. Like we could be sitting at the table and I'd want to finish my dinner before you finish it. Like I'm competitive at absolutely everything, and tagging is the ultimate competition.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, I think potentially it was a perfect job for me growing up.
Yeah, that's probably the best, like the personality trait that fits that role.
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely.
Tagger, competitive. You're discussing before about preparation to play.
Yeah.
How do you have like a pre-game routine, or has it evolved? How has it evolved over the years?
My pre-game's probably pretty unique. All the girls tell me about how psycho I am before the game because I just chuck my headphones on and I don't talk to anyone. Like my ideology is if I have my own way to prepare, then nothing outside of that can alter it. So the only thing that can alter my performance is myself. And I'm a really big believer of that. So I just chuck my headphones on and do my own thing.
Right, and then straight, yeah, that's it. So headphones on, do your strapping, do your warm up, and
that's it. I'm ready to go. Otherwise, if I'm having conversations before the game or anything like that, to me, you never know what else is going to happen. So I might be chatting to someone and they say something that I start thinking about heaps, or whatever it may be. So unless it's sort of talking to one of the coaches or something, you'll pretty much just find me with my headphones on, walking around the change room doing my own thing, and nothing can really impact you from there.
Interesting. You spoke about earlier about your wearing your helmet. Do you want to describe or discuss how it came about? You had a couple of back-to-back concussions earlier on in the career?
So like I said before, when I started sort of playing senior footy, I was 16 to 17, and I was really, really small. Couldn't really protect myself and protect my head, and got a few concussions, and things weren't, it's not a good sign once you're getting concussion after concussion, and it became pretty evident that it was starting to take an effect on me. I just wasn't feeling right, and I was constantly having headaches and stuff like that. So decided just to take a year off the game and make sure that, I guess the symptoms stopped first of all, but secondly that that I was fit and I was healthy, and ultimately I was, and I was able to come back to play footy. And my nan told me if I didn't wear a helmet, she wasn't coming to watch me play again. And nan had been to every single footy game, so like I said, it became a no-brainer. I wanted Nan there, and I wanted Nan supporting me, and I wanted her to feel comfortable and confident. So the helmet it was.
Yeah, interesting. You said your symptoms. What would you have? Headaches? Did you have were you nauseous? Or?
Yeah, it was sort of different. It was different at different times. There was a lot of. It constantly felt like there was pressure in my head. I had a lot of headaches, and there was one time where sort of I become really faint, and sort of I guess the peak of my symptoms came when I sort of passed out in a morning.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, which was at Nan's house again. So of course Nan was always around, the poor thing. Surprised, she didn't have a heart attack or something trying to look after me, because the amount of times that she sort of saw me get hurt at footy or whatever it may be. But yeah, there was just different things at different times that a 16 to 17-year-old probably shouldn't be feeling. And it all came back down to, I guess, the concussions and being so small, playing in a women's sport. And ultimately I just needed to take some time off to get all that right and get that better. And it's not something you can really fuck around with your brain. So as much as I didn't want to, I had to do what was right. And yeah, that's what I did.
In that time off, did you, obviously once the symptoms kind of dissipated, were you able to get back to training and did you focus on getting stronger and bigger from there?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily stronger and bigger. I think I was more learning how to look after myself. So, learning to turn your body into a tackle, or learning to protect your head, or even when you're tackling, learning to make sure that your head's braced. And just little things like that were more so what I was looking at, and making sure I looked after that side of myself and that side of my health. And, they're really key skills that now everybody's learning in footy. But back then, women's footy wasn't at where it's at now, and there wasn't enough knowledge for people to teach you that sort of stuff.
Is there much information, or do you get told much now about not so much how to prevent concussions, but to kind of look after your brain in terms of supplementation, in all that area? There's not too much else you can do other than supplement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like nutrition wise.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, I guess, important things. I think the first thing is education, and I think that's the biggest thing that the AFL are doing now, and not even just the AFL, like broader society are starting to understand the impacts of concussion, and that's really massive. And I think that's the biggest thing, I guess, that's different, is people genuinely understanding concussion and the power of concussion. And it's so important for people to know about, not just sports people, but people in general. I think there's a real misconception that concussions are only things that happen in contact sports. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Things happen every day that, accidents happen. And unfortunately, your head is extremely tender and it can happen to anybody. So it's not just sports people that need to know about it. It's everyone.
I think I read somewhere that one of the biggest ones is being on roller coasters. You end up all the jolting around your head does is just your brain just smashing on the side of your skull. It doesn't really have to be like your neck, like whiplash type of thing. It could just be the mini jolts that's going around, the repetitive nature of your brain hitting your skull is going to give you concussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the important part is, again, it's a misconception that it has to be a massive hit. It doesn't, unfortunately. And it happens different every time to everyone. So like I said, it's not just a sports injury. It's an everyday thing.
I think now going to the future as well, there's lots of kind of research that's being done on it. Like, for example, the UFC they're doing a big study with psychedelic mushrooms and looking how that affects brain health on older fighters who have retired. And obviously, they have no misconception that would have a massive amount of injury or brain damage, that they come in and they would research how their brain kind of regenerates from using the mushrooms and seeing how that changes over time as well.
Yeah.
But also fish oil, anything that really reduces inflammation as well, which happens when you get concussed, your brain swells up. So like fish oil. Have you heard of CBD oil?
Oh yeah, that's something that's really starting to come out lately.
Yeah, and even now that I think they're legalizing it now in Australia to be able to, you can buy it over the counter as well in like chemist warehouse and stuff like that. But there's still undecided on how much like a dose is for it to be effective, because it does. The CBD does it reduces like anxiety, inflammation, and a lot of the stuff coming out of America is saying that athletes use it and they find it beneficial for like joints and for brain health as well, which is kind of crazy. And there's certain nutrition strategies like intermittent fasting, and there's another one where I'm thinking the ketogenic diet as well, because there's certain effects that happen on the brain that kind of flicks a switch, which is kind of crazy as well.
Yeah, I reckon that they're going to the perfect pool of people to research that sort of stuff. I dare say that the UFC fighters face this stuff on almost a monthly basis.
What's even crazier with UFC is that they have to train, like you can't not train and to get hit. Like if you have sparring sessions, and you know, I'm not a fighter or anything, but I do a bit of Muay Thai training, and we do sparring and stuff. You get hit and it's like, oh, we've got a headache. Well, that's obviously I got concussion, or or I kind of come out. I'm like, geez, I'm like really tired and fatigued, and there's never the same symptom twice. Like there's different. I came out of different sparrings with different kind of symptoms of a concussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a key thing about concussion and concussion research is, everybody's brain is so different. Every concussion is so different. So you can research so much stuff, but it's never going to cover everything and every type of concussion or every type of brain or anything like that. So it's so important that the research is continuous and ongoing. And I'm so glad that there's so many more people talking about it and so many more people researching it, and so many more people being educated, I guess.
Yeah. Well, what's even worse, I feel like the NFL is even worse when it comes to concussion like that. Like those guys, like at least with fighting, you actually try to defend. You don't want to get hit in the head. But in NFL, you actually taught to lead with your head for tackles and to butt heads with your opponent, to use your head to kind of manipulate yourself into certain situations, which is crazy. And you can, when watching the sport on TV, you hear the clunk of the helmets onto their pads, which makes me cringe sometimes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I think that, again, like I said, you think back 5 years ago and there was literally no one talking about this stuff at all. So hopefully the more the conversation goes and the more research that goes, those are the things that are changing. The ideologies of using your head as protection or a helmet protecting things like, I say that I wear a helmet, but my ideology is if it's 1%, it's 1%. And I'm definitely not going in headbutting anyone thinking that I'm safe because I got a bit of cushioning. But
you get a free kick. Or even you get a free kick.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
Putting the concussion aside as like a challenging moment, has there been any other challenging moments through your life, and what kind of got you through that time?
Yeah, I think the concussions was definitely the key one of it. But growing up, I guess, first of all, growing up is a fucking challenge within itself, isn't it? We all try and fight to be older, and then once we're older, we all want to be younger. But growing up, I guess there were a couple of key things that when I was a bit younger, when I was real young, actually, my parents sort of separated, and that's challenging. I mean, I'm real lucky with the dynamic of my family and stuff like that now. But at the time, when you're young and your family sort of separates, it's difficult and you don't really understand it. And it's change, and we're humans, and it's okay to not like change. And then, probably the other big thing when I was 15, had a good friend who passed away really suddenly, and that's the sort of stuff that no one teaches you about. But again, it's an experience that you learn a lot from, and I've been really lucky that I've always had a really good support network with my family. Like I said, I'm extremely close with a number of people that I grew up with, and I have really good friends. And as well, at that time, I was at school, and the school was super supportive. So I think that the key thing in both of those moments were having support networks and knowing that I had those support networks.
Yes.
I said before in this podcast that the best way we learn is through other people, and having those people around me who could, I guess, I could learn from. Some people who had been through similar situations, some people who hadn't been through similar situations, but were just there for me. Having support networks and having people around you is so powerful. And I think in both of those situations, there's not necessarily anything that can change what's happened. And there's not really anything, I guess, that can take away any of the pains or the emotions that came with either of those experiences. But having people that accepted that and understood was really important for me. And just knowing I had people that were there for me was massive.
The feeling of loss is such an powerful emotion. Did it make you kind of appreciate life more after?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the time, it was really hard to, I guess, see anything other than that. But as you grow old, I was about to say grow old. I'm definitely not old, but as you get older, I guess, and you've had those experiences and you've had all the learnings. I guess the next time you come into a challenge, you come into it a bit more equipped. And that's not to say that nothing's going to rock you again or confront you again or hurt you again and make you feel pain again, but it's the skills and the I guess the mentalities that you go into it with, which is which is ultimately what makes us grow as people and what helps us when we come into those situations again.
It's so interesting. Moving on from that, I had a little friend tell me something yesterday. I need you to explain this story to me.
This will be good. This could be absolutely anything. And if this friend's Ruby Slasher,
supposedly,
hit me.
Maybe not. We won't put her. Supposedly you had something to do with a foot burn. You had foot burn last year. Do you want to explain that little story to us?
Surely not. Righto. It is quite the tale. I was halfway through the VFL season, which is a good start. And went out one night and ended up having a bit of a big night, and we ended up around the fireplace. And I'm not the smartest pig of the bunch. And long story short, ended up tripping over into the fire pit, and had third-degree burns up the back of my leg, and bits of the fire came shooting out of the fire and went into my other shoe. So I had burns on one foot, a burn on my other leg, and ended up being almost 6 weeks of daily hospital trips to get the dressing changed and whatnot. And you wouldn't read about it, but I came back just in time to play in the final series that year, and the Pies won the flag. So missed majority of the season, came back just in time, and I was absolutely fucking laughing.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I can't believe that's you were out for 6 weeks, and let's let you come back in like that.
There was 2 games. Well, with the VFL season, the way that it's sort of set up is that the AFL girls are expected to sort of play a bit and then have a bit of time off anyway.
Okay.
So it happened in my first week off. So I was sort of lucky that it matched up pretty nicely with when I wasn't meant to be playing anyway. But it ended up being a couple of extra weeks that I took off, and came back just in time. I think I came back with 1 round until finals started. So got myself back into the team, and I was bloody racked.
That's a good laugh. There's a funny story. Adelaide Crows back in, I think it was 1991 or 1992, they did like a pre-season training camp, and they had to like walk over hot coals as like one of those mind over matter type of challenges, right? And then half the squad ended up getting like all these burns on their feet, and they weren't able to train for a couple of
I
days.
have heard that story
because they had all these injuries on their feet.
Yeah, burns are not fun at all. Going back to what I would tell young girls and young kids is stay away from the fires. They are no good.
Oh goodness. Oh, that's a bloody good story. When she told me to ask you about that, I had to what is that? What could that story be?
Oh yeah, it wasn't good. It actually, a lot of people like to bring that one up. I've got quite the scar on the back of my leg as well, which means that every time someone sees it, they want to hear the story. And
Did you get like really big blisters, like big yellow ones?
Yeah, it was like the whole thing was blistered, and then.
Yuck.
I didn't want to go to the hospital at the start because I was down in Sale and I had a 3-hour drive home. So I put a blister pad thing on it. And like I'm saying, like this thing is bigger than my hand. And then I got to the doctors when I got back home and they were like, this is not what you should have put on this at all. Like, so when they,
because that would trap the heat
so when
in,
they peeled it off, they peeled off the entire like layer of skin that was like protecting. Like that had already healed, like not healed because it was still fucking gross. But yeah, so having a big night and being around a fire pit is a big no-no from me from now on.
That's gnarly. What are the moments that fire you up or motivate you the most?
Ooh, I don't think it's probably moments. I think it's definitely just like everything comes back to that competitive nature for me. There's probably no moments, I guess, that fire me up. There's definitely moments that I think of that make me want to be better, and that's sort of, I guess, the past 2 final series when we've just missed the mark. But ultimately, every game for me, it's just the competitiveness. I don't want to. I believe you're only as good as your last game, and that helps me want to always be better. But again, it's just the team aspect. I want to be as good as I can be for the team, and I guess that comes from being a tagger. I knew if I did my role, it was going to be massive for the team. So I know I'm not a tagger anymore, but I still have a role to play, and just wanting to succeed in that role is probably what really gets me going.
If you were to have dinner with 4 people and you can choose anyone and your 4 people, who would you pick?
I like this. I'm going Justin Bieber, Saquon Barkley, Tom Brady, and I want to go away from the sports and try really mix it up. I can't think of the fourth one.
You named off 3 people in record time, faster than anyone's ever picked them before on this podcast, and you can't pick the fourth one.
I know. I'm like in my head, literally, my head's going like, would I have like Oprah Winfrey? Would I have somebody real scandalous, so I could like pick their brain and actually find out everything, like a Donald Trump, or like somebody that would just like answer some of the big world questions that I have. I'd really love someone like that. And I don't know how, when I thought of that, I thought of somebody like Oprah compared to Donald Trump. I don't know how those 2 came into that category. But I'm going to go 5 for the sake of it. And I'm going to put Oprah and Donald in there and hope some of my world questions could be answered.
That's interesting because, you got an alternate.
Yeah.
I let one other person have an alternate as well, but you just decided to have
I'm going to have to chuck him in there. Awesome. Otherwise, I could honestly be here for 3 hours trying to decide on that 4th.
Nice. That's not bad. Where would you go for dinner?
Look, considering I'm taking all of them, I'd hope one of them would pick somewhere because I wouldn't be able to afford anywhere that they'd like to go. And I'd really hope that they'd be shouting.
Yeah, or do you reckon they would all split the bill, or do you reckon one of them will fork the bill for everyone?
Oh, I feel like Oprah would be the type. Like, she's always giving out free shit. Surely she'll shout us dinner.
You get a car.
And I'd hope to drive away from that sort of dinner with a Range Rover.
Oh, yes.
That would be nice.
Of course. To finish off the podcast, I usually ask one of my number one fan of the podcast, my Uncle Frank.
Love this already.
Gave me a whole list of questions.
Go.
Yeah.
Let's
Ready?
do it.
If money wasn't an object and nothing was impossible, what would you do?
Fly. Like, and I mean like not like fly in an like astronaut thing or something. I think it would be so cool. You know when you see like the birds at the beach and they try and fly against the wind? Like I want to be in that situation.
And they just stay still?
Yeah, I want to be in that situation and I want to see if I can do it.
you taking your competitiveness.
Yeah, see, this is prime example. This is what I mean.
You want to see if you can outfly
the wind, yeah.
Yeah, fly to the wind. So like a Superman, or would you want to flap your arms?
No, I want to flap my arms. Like I want to get into it.
Do you have the wingspan?
Nah, I am little as hell, but I'd be trying.
That's awesome. Look, Britt, I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast, and I reckon when you come down into Perth next time you play against Freo or West Coast, I reckon I might have to catch up and come watch you.
Absolutely, I'd love it. Well, the way we're going, it might be 2030 before I get over there, but we'll see how we go, eh?
Be able to fly. Awesome, mate. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Matt. It was awesome.